married Tadman, and I live here at 41 Price Street East for the last 24 years. But I grew up next door, and for the first 18 years of my life, my mom and dad had seven children, and I was the third in line out of seven. And so five boys and two girls. And my sister was the youngest, so needless to say, I grew up as a tomboy, and it it was fun at times, but other times it wasn't so much fun having five brothers to put up with. I was born on September the 11th, 1945, so I'm a 9/11 baby, really, and everybody knows about that horrible story. But my mom delivered me at Coburg Hospital. In those days, you had to pay to actually get out of the hospital, and so that left a real dilemma for my parents. But my dad and my uncle decided, because there was no fish being caught in the bay or close at Bay of Quinte, they decided to go way out into the lake, and they were fishing for herring, and they got such a big catch that they were able to pay to get me out of the hospital and my mom, and also really provide for the family for most of the rest of that winter. So I always said, probably I was the best thing that ever happened to the family, just because, I provided so well for them even in birth. And I kind of even in some ways ended the Second World War, because that was the year that was finished. So, and as you can tell, I do have a slight sense of humor, but a bit too much boasting. So I grew up in Gosport, a hamlet south of the main part of Brighton. We were known as Shantytown, probably the ghetto of Brighton, but it was an experience that, as I've got older, I really appreciate. And one of the things that I always remember as a young person is that there was smelt fishing, and they were just a tiny fish about this long, and they were catching tons and tons of them. And so myself and many of the kids in the area would skip school for the week or two, at least a couple of days, but sometimes the whole time, because we could make good money picking fish, but not for my dad. He never paid me to pick fish, so I would pick for other people. And that was a way that I could earn money to buy the things that all young people want to get, like new clothes, new shoes, lots of chocolate bars and all that, ice creams and all those fun things. Some of the fun things I remember, and I probably was not totally obedient, but one of the things that I remember so clearly, I wasn't allowed to go to Presqu'ile Point, which was just exactly across the bay from where we lived, and it was my great uncle Grant's hotel and pavilion, and there was a dance there every night of the week except Sunday. And Sunday night we would go by boat across for a sing song. But once it got dark, because my dad did not want me going over the dance, he thought it was a den of iniquity. He used to say, you don't need to be there. So I would sneak out of the house, go in the rowboat, row across, directly across from where I live now, be at the dance, and row back home, sneak in my bed, and I don't think anybody knew the difference. But my older two brothers worked there, and I think sometimes they did tell on me. But anyways, I had things that I could tell on them, especially that they were drinking underage. So it all worked out fine. The other thing that I remember too is that we had to walk to school, to public school. It wasn't so bad in the summertime, but in the winter time when the roads weren't plowed properly, it was a real struggle, sort of walking through these heavy snowbanks to town. And it was about 2.25 miles, and heavy going. And sometimes when it would ice over, we actually even wore our skates and skated to school, because they didn't have the plows that they have now. And so I used to kind of like that, getting to skate to school. And some of the town kids wouldn't go on those days because it was too treacherous for them. But we, living that much farther, were able to skate. So that was fun. But my dad really thought it was unfair because other kids in the area were being bused in, and we, being 2.25 miles away, were not. And so the school board said no, they weren't going to bus us. So my dad said, well, then we'll strike. And obviously, it didn't take much to convince all us kids that we'd be glad to strike. And so we didn't get any attention from the school board. So my dad phoned the Toronto Star, and they came down and interviewed. And so I guess that got the school board's attention. So, anyways, we got our school bus, and from then on, they always bused us, and they still do to this day.